안녕하세요. If there is a message in my talk today, it is this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Hopefully, by the end of my presentation, you would have a better appreciation of why I am saying what I am saying. Today's talk is also going to be about why certain great innovations succeed while some great innovations fail. I'm going to talk about the innovations will more likely succeed if we can bring along the partners in the innovation ecosystem with us. So that's the premise of my talk today. And to make that point, I am going to take an example from an industry that is very different from mine, and that is the automobile tire manufacturing. The company in spotlight is Michelin, a French multinational company. They had an envious position in 1990s. They were the largest tire manufacturer in the world, and they were also the most innovative. They introduced the radial tire in 1946. And in 90s, they announced they are going to come with the next big thing in tires, which they called as the PAX system. P-A-X, PAX system. So what is a PAX system? If you are driving a car, and if your car tire gets punctured, you normally have to stop. But if you have a PAX system, you don't have to stop. You can keep on driving for 125 miles at a highway speed, let's say a maximum of 55 miles per hour. It's great. So what is there not to like about it? First of all, it's hugely convenient. You don't have to stop the car, get the jack from the deck and start to repair. You don't have to call the tow truck. You don't have to call the repairman and wait for that. It's very convenient. You can keep on driving to your office, park the car in the office, and call somebody to fix it, right? It's great. Or you can drive to the mechanic. Roughly 200,000 automobile accidents in the United States happen because of less air tire pressure. So it also contributes to the safety of the vehicle. Now, if you don't need to replace the car tire immediately, that means you don't need a spare tire. And that means you can have more space for luggages when the automobile companies design the car. So also more space. The Honda Corporation declared in 2005 that their Odyssey minivan will carry the PAX system and therefore will have more room for luggage. So everything was looking good. The famous New York Times wrote an article in 2004 basically praising the company, driving without air but driving. A year later, they praised Michelin for reinventing the cars. But in 2007, the tone started to change. They were asking, is Michelin solving a problem or creating many problems? A few more months later, New York Times declared that Michelin is giving up on PAX tires. So they are retiring the system. J.D. Power Survey magazine, which is a very influential magazine in the automobile industry, they said 7 out of 8 customers said they wanted this tire, but still it got retired. Why? There were 2 problems. Problem number 1. To replace a PAX tire, the mechanics needed special equipment. And most mechanics did not carry this special equipment because there were only a few cars with PAX system. So if you were the proud owner of a PAX vehicle, if you have your tire punctured, you go to a mechanic and he says, sorry, I cannot help. You go to the next person, they say, sorry, I cannot help. So eventually you spend a lot of time trying to figure out a mechanic, and many people ended up buying a new tire because it was just more easier. And because of the alignment, they ended up buying sometimes 2 tires, and the customers were very unhappy with this system. And the customers even had a class action lawsuit against the company. The second problem was for the automobile manufacturers to include the PAX system, they had to redesign their underbody of the car, which is not an easy process. It takes almost 36 months to do that. A lot of money, needs regulatory approval. So it was difficult for them. And the cash-strapped automobile manufacturers said, we are going to wait. If PAX becomes the standard everywhere, we will adopt, but we are going to wait. But the PAX failed before, and they did not include that. So what is happening here? There is a great product, but the product is not fitting the ecosystem. The product cannot be replaced by the mechanics. The product cannot be included by the automobile manufacturers. Remember, when Michelin had their radial tire, it was easy. Just replace the old tire and put a radial tire. But PAX system was different. It required re-engineering. And many times when we have great products, we need to think, how does it fit with the ecosystem? And the fit with the ecosystem will partly determine the success of the innovation. That's the point I'm trying to argue here. Now, what does this mean in healthcare? That is the area that I work. Healthcare is more complicated than the automobile ecosystem. Healthcare systems vary from one country to another. Many books written about which is the best healthcare system in the world. They've been debating this for the last 10 years, and they will continue to debate this for the next 10 years because every healthcare system is different and complex. Now, the irony is this. The human biology is very similar across countries. There are some ethnic differences, but fundamentally, our human body in Korea or in Japan or China or United States is pretty similar. But the way we diagnose a disease, way we prevent a disease, the way we treat a disease is very different from one country to another. You may think we are all based on clinical trials, evidence-based medicine, so we may follow the same procedure in every country, but that is not the truth. The patient journey from one country to another is very different. Let me give you an example. This is a case of stroke, ischemic stroke. So you can see there is the carotid artery that supplies the blood to the brain. And when there is a block in this particular artery, there is less blood flow to the brain, and then the brain cells die, and that is what we call a stroke. So what is the biggest risk factor for stroke? It is high blood pressure, hypertension. So the way to prevent stroke in these high-risk groups is to have good medicines that reduce the blood pressure, antihypertensives. Now, in this particular table, you can see these are different classes of antihypertensives. thiazide diuretics, beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, ACE inhibitors. And these are different countries. You can see that in Japan, the patients, 50% of the patients get calcium channel blocker. In Ireland, only 9% get. Why? That's how healthcare systems function. In United States, 46% of the hypertensive patients get thiazide diuretics, but in Italy, only 14% get. I'm just giving you a flavor of how things work across systems. Now, the major way to diagnose stroke is CT scan. In Sweden, roughly 100% of the patients get CT scan. This is not CT scan, this is MRI scan. I'm talking about CT scan. 100% of Swedish patients get CT scan. Only 60% of Spanish patients get it, and only 20% of Italian patients get CT scan. These are a little bit old data, but you get the point. This is the MRI machine usage, which is the second preferred diagnosis, and you see the rates vary between countries. Now, one of the treatments for ischemic stroke is a procedure called as carotid endarterectomy. It's a tongue twister. This particular procedure is a surgical procedure. You can see its usage is very high in the United States, almost nothing in Korea. This is how healthcare systems function. So when, as a pharmaceutical company, we make a product, it's very hard to make a product that perfectly fit in with all the ecosystems because all ecosystems are fundamentally different in how they operate. So, okay. So I'm going to talk about a very specific example in Korea where we have a great product, but the fit with the ecosystem has to be optimized. So please pay your attention because this disease kills children. And the name of the disease is spinal muscular atrophy. It's a very rare genetic disease. Basically, the kids with this disease, their motor neurons die, their nerve cells die, and they cannot move. Their muscles is wasted. And this disease, depending on the severity, is in 4 types: SMA 1, 2, 3, 4. Type 1 is the most severe, and 60% of the total SMA patients are type 1. 80% of these children with SMA type 1 will die within the 4 years after being born. In Korea, a bit more than 30 SMA children are born every year, of which 20 are type 1. And in the past, we could do nothing to these children because there was no treatment. We will diagnose it, we give some supportive care, and a lot of these children die over time or get permanently ventilated. So I'm going to show a video of a child called as Brett. And he is one of the lucky ones who survived, the 20% who did not die with SMA type 1. And he and his sister is sitting together. Please pay attention to all the equipment around him that is required to keep his life support. You will see the tube that gives the ventilator support for him to breathe. You can see that he cannot speak. He is using a Dynabox to communicate. And he cannot stand by himself, sit by himself, and he is completely debilitated. To the video.
Do you want to sing a song, Brett? My name is Paige Kingsley, and Brett is my brother. Brett has spinal muscular atrophy. It means that weak muscles throughout the body. Brett loves to watch movies. He is very into sports. We like play outside. We like go down to the ducks, and we also like read books to him. Holy salami! That goofy cat's just making things worse and worse. He laughs. He communicates through the Dynavox.
Paige, I love you.
Oh, I love you too, Brett. He's the class clown.
Did you see my video?
I did. Are you kidding?
I'm pretty cute, don't you think?
It was the Columbus Marathon, and seeing him cross the finish line let things know that impossible can become possible if you just believe.
So this is just to give you a glimpse of what is the life of a patient with SMA type 1, right? The ones who survive. Now, thanks to the advances in medicine, there are multiple therapies that have become available to treat these patients. And Novartis is bringing one such, it's a gene therapy. And this gene therapy, you have to give one infusion and the patient can pretty much have a normal life. It is miraculous if you think about it. We have data up to 7 years. You give one infusion, the gene, and the patient can have a healthy life. But there is only one problem. The nerve cells that die, you cannot get it back. So you need to give this gene therapy very early before the nerve cells start to die. If you're too late in the game, you can prevent the worsening of the disease, but you cannot reverse the damage that is already done, the nerves that has been lost, okay? So timing is everything in SMA treatment. Time is neurons and every day counts. So how is SMA being managed and diagnosed across countries? So there are a very small group of countries, very, very small, that have something called as a carrier testing. They check the parents. Do you have SMA gene or do you have an SMA mutation? And if you're a carrier, you know that you have a risk of having a baby with an SMA and you're very well prepared. So that parents would be prepared to do the diagnosis early on. In some countries, like the Netherlands, there is something called as a newborn screening. After a child is born, within 1 to 2 days, we will do a genetic test, a panel of genetic tests for many diseases, including SMA. So within 2 days of a child is born, you know if the child has SMA or not. Again, you can treat very immediately and the child would have a normal life. But in many countries, this is where vast majority of the countries are, including Korea, there is no newborn screening. So the way you diagnose it, the child grows, the child is not moving properly, parents are a bit suspicious, they wait for a little bit, then they take to the pediatrician and back and forth, and finally they reach the expert in the tertiary hospital, get the primary test, get the secondary test. Many months have passed, depending on the countries, right? And then some damage is already done and it's a bit late to treat. So think about it. It's like the Pax tire, right? We have a brilliant product, but it's just not fitting right at the right time. And how are we going to solve this problem? And this made sense many years ago, because what will you do if you diagnose SMA? Nothing in the past. So we understand why healthcare systems are like here. We hope that the healthcare systems will all start newborn screening over time. But till then, what are we going to do to help these children? We, Novartis, are not an expert in diagnosing diseases. We are not a diagnostic company. We don't have relationship with the pediatricians because we don't sell into that customer group. So we did something called as the Health Tech Challenge, where we invited the startups in Korea to say, hey, we got a problem. Is there anything we can do together? And many people got excited about this because it's the lives of children. And Humanscape is one of the company who came, and they have an app called as Mommy Talk, which they claim that 60% of parents of newborn babies use this app, and we can help educate them If you see any signs of SMA, immediately go to this and this doctor. So that's a partnership we are having. Another one, which is a more established company, is Perkin-Elmer, and they are introducing screening tests which will democratize testing of SMA. Right now, it's only well done in tertiary hospitals. So this is an example. I want to give you one more example. This is another disease, and sorry for bombarding you with very complicated names of diseases. This disease is called as ankylosing spondylitis, also called as bamboo spine. Affects young men predominantly, and over time they start to bend like this, as you see. So what happens is that the vertebrae in the back, it starts to fuse together and leads to this condition which has a lot of pain. So what is a good treatment for ankylosing spondylitis looks like? If you have a good treatment, then there should not be structural damage, but structural damage is not easy to see. It's inside the body. The MRI is the best way to assess it, but the Korean reimbursement system, you can only do an MRI upon diagnosis. Then they rely on X-ray, and the X-rays is not easy to compare. Doctors are struggling. Doctors don't have time. So we thought, what if we use AI to see if the disease is progressing or not? And if the disease is progressing, we need to change the drug. And Novartis has a drug that may be helpful, other companies may have. But if the disease is not progressing, it is fantastic, just stay on the current drug. So that is the model. And here when we look at it, AI is fast, objective, and the expertise of diagnosing it is not required. So we partner with a company called as Deepnoid, who is a startup leader in the medical diagnosis space. And they are looking at vertebral column, looking at diagnosing the structural damages, and we are in the process of developing it. So it's another example where we have a drug for a disease whose progression is hidden, and we are trying to find out mechanisms where doctors can see it very clearly when the disease is progressing, and they can consider if our drug is needed. Novartis has a new initiative called as the Novartis Biome. And the Korea chapter, we had a soft launch in 2020. And this is to connect, the company with the digital ecosystem. So there are many parts in this biome, including investments. But the most important thing to my taste is the last one, which is called as a data sandbox. What is it? Novartis has more than 2 million patient years of clinical trial data. And clinical trial data is very clean data. It is not like the electronic medical records data in the hospitals, which are not clean data. These are very clean data, and we are willing to give this data anonymized to people and the startups who are interested to work on these projects. If you think data is the new oil, here it is, right? And we are willing to give it with no strings attached. So these are some of the partners that we have acquired over a short period of time. Some large companies, some small companies, but all great companies. My experience is working with startups has been a great, great experience. Firstly, we have things that the startups don't have, and startups have things that the big companies don't have. Let me give you a quick snapshot of what it looks like. We are in the healthcare. We have customer relationship that we built over decades. We know our doctors, we know the patient flows, we know how hospital works. Startups don't. We can share that information. We are a global company. A solution developed in Korea, we can help export it to the other parts of the world. a startup by itself will struggle to do that. We have the reputation and the brand that was built over probably decades. A startup is yet to create it. That is a brand that we can lend to a startup. We have a monetizing channel. We sell drugs to Ministry of Health and Welfare. They pay us money. Startups sometimes have very great apps, but there is no way yet for the government to reimburse those apps because there is no fixed pathways of reimbursing non-traditional products like application. But if we can come together through our product, we can maybe find a monetizing opportunity for some of these applications. What is it that we don't have? We don't have the technical expertise. I don't know coding. My people in the company doesn't know coding. We all heard about AI, but we really don't know what it means in practical terms. So the technical expertise sits with the startups. They have the focus to develop these kind of solutions that we will not because we have other core business to focus on. So this is a great win-win situation between the startups and the large company. It is something that I have realized over time. And in many of these partnerships, we do not exchange money. We don't pay anybody anything. Right? Because there is this win-win situations and we are trying to create an ecosystem. In the past, maybe a century ago, we practiced this closed innovation. That means we will do everything by ourselves. We want to safeguard our intellectual property, our secrets. We don't want to talk to anybody. Everything is closed. That's how we operated maybe 100 years ago. Then slowly companies started to go towards open innovation where we said, yes, if a biotech company has a great product, we want to buy them. And rarely, if we have a product that we don't want, we may even out-license them. So, it started a bit of a diffusion of innovation. Now what we are thinking about is ecosystem-centric cross-organizational innovation, which we call as an innovation network. This is some examples that I shared belongs there. This is ecosystem-centric, and we are innovating together across the organizations. And we did not know these terms when we started all this, right? We just had problems. Some people went and talked to some people, and all these collaborations started. But actually what we are doing is innovation networks. And remember what I told you in the beginning with the PAX tire. And I'm trying to bring it back now, and that is going to be my last slide. That if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And bring those partners who can help your product fit very well with the ecosystem. And that is a concept that I want to share with you. It's a concept that we at Novartis are starting to embrace, and we welcome more people to join these efforts to bring longevity and good health to the citizens of Korea. 감사합니다. Thank you very much.
Thank you.